Thank you so much for coming out to Subduing Abuse, Recognizing, Preventing, and Mandatory Reporting workshop. I'd like to go ahead and let you know that this is a workshop that has been presented. Reporting workshop. I'd like to go ahead and let you know that this is a workshop that has been presented. During this time, I like to go ahead and provide you a pre-survey in regards to some of the material we will cover and to see what your perspective is in regards to abuse. And we'll just go ahead and take a few minutes to do that. And then we'll take it from that point, and I'll introduce myself. Thank you so much for taking the time to fill out that survey. We'll go ahead and I'd like to introduce you to who I am. I am currently a senior at Brigham Young University. I am studying marriage and family. And once I graduate, I will be a family life educator. So I'll be putting together workshops such as this or working closely with community services. I'm looking forward to possibly working with CASA, which is an organization to help foster children. So those are some of the items in regards to what I will be doing upon graduation. This particular workshop that I have created is in preparation for my practicum, which is my family course, Family 445. It is a supervised presentation. Everything is researched thoroughly, and all the statistics and information will be provided. If you would like, at the end, I can email you all of my resources as well. Most documents do contain the actual resource themselves as well as the slides that you will see throughout the presentation. One of the reasons that this particular workshop is so important to me is that I am a survivor of childhood abuse. And I've lived my life advocating for others. And that is something that is truly, truly important to me. And I'm grateful that all of you are taking this opportunity to come closer and understand what that means in regards to recognizing abuse, helping to prevent it, and also reporting abuse. The overview of the workshop itself. The purpose of the workshop is simply to raise awareness on abuse. As we've discussed, it is simply about recognizing, preventing, and reporting abuse. The nature of the workshop is to better assist you in understanding how to recognize and prevent and report. The workshop is not an appropriate place to report any suspected abuse. I am not a therapist, therefore I do not fall under any areas where I can provide therapeutic answers as well, just so you are aware of that. I do invite you to be engaged in the material and participate actively throughout this particular workshop. We'll be doing some hands-on activities, and we'll have some discussions in regards to what is going on with abuse and how we can recognize it and some of the symptomology of it, and how we can go forth and help others gain the same knowledge that you're gaining here today. I invite you to take this material out to those that you know, whether it's family or friends, or if you're in a position of leadership within your community, start an outreach within that community itself by starting programs and initiating the opportunity for others to learn and grow in regards to understanding how to recognize, prevent, and report abuse. Now, as you've noticed, the workshop does state mandatory reporting. I've worked closely with a partner who actually lives in Idaho, where all individuals are mandatory reporters. Here in Colorado, we are all not, as common people, known to be mandatory reporters, unless you want to apply just the moral and ethical value behind reporting of abuse to help protect a child. What are some of the benefits of becoming educated about recognizing abuse? What do you think some of those benefits may be? Well, I think it may be because just to help protect a child, to take them out of harm's way, to educate so that we're able to recognize abuse and prevent it and break the cycle of abuse would be a fantastic thing as well. So basically, we're looking at individuals who are educated in recognizing abuse will know how to seek out proper help from the proper authorities, therefore helping victims to eradicate abuse from their lives. And as you have stated, it will take them out of harm's way and allow them to grow and manifest and contend with the emotions that they're feeling at that time in regards to the abuse that they personally have experienced. A non-mandatory reporter benefits people learning how to report abuse. A non-mandatory reporter will want to report abuse to eliminate future harm to a child, the elderly, a disabled person that could even be life-threatening. So you could actually save their lives in the end. It is not, if you come into the area where you possibly suspect abuse, it is not your job to go out and investigate the abuse. Once you turn it over to the proper authorities, you really have done all that you're able to do in regards to trying to assure that that child is in a safe environment. So that is the first step in making sure that you prevent that abuse. Always go with your gut instinct. If you suspect that something's going on within the home, or with a child, it's always best to call the authorities and have them go out and investigate the situation. You know, you're safeguarded. It's not like you're making a non-reliable report. You're just calling them with what your suspicions are. And that is the proper thing to do in order to help safeguard a child. Anyone who reports abuse may implement professional help and get that for their family, therefore breaking the cycle of abuse. Reporting abuse may provide a better future for the victim as well as the abuser. Many times the abuser does not realize that what they're doing is so harmful. They're also stuck in that cycle of abuse too. So therefore, you may be able to assist both the victim as well as the abuser seek out help, professional help, before it's too late. Reporting abuse simply could assist with removing the abuser from the actual home in order to prevent further abuse or neglect happening within that home, and again safeguarding the individual who is being abused. Reporting abuse could again break that cycle of abuse because it is a constant cycle. It's repetitive and it only tends to escalate as time goes on. It does not typically de-escalate. Most people who are in abusive homes, typically the cycle will become more rapid and occur with greater forms of abuse. So to try to nip it in the bud as early as possible is the best thing that we are able to do as we press forth. Reporting abuse also by mandatory reporter will prevent any legal types of prosecution, because if you are a mandatory reporter, which we will go over who is required to report abuse in the state of Colorado within the legal sanctions of the law. We'll discuss that in a little bit. And this will help prevent prosecution for them. When individuals report abuse, they will be able to maintain their professional licensures and good standing with the community. So that is always a positive thing as well. How can we help prevent abuse? We simply need to raise awareness of what abuse is. We need to advocate. We want to consider advocating for others. We want to consider alerting authorities through reporting abuse and assessing and providing community resources, which at the end of the workshop, there will be some community resources provided for you on the back table. So please feel free to help yourself with those. And if you'd like a copy of anything, please leave your name and email on the sheet of paper in the back, and I will be more than glad to get you a hard copy, so therefore you may provide it to others as well. I'd like to go ahead and share this video with you. Abuse is a universal problem. Abuse is found in all communities. It crosses over all social economic barriers, and it has no prejudice against a particular class, social economics, ethnic group, gender, or race. And age is not a discriminating factor on abuse either. The elderly as well as the young are abused, and we're starting to see elderly abuse more and more common within the community. What is abuse? Abuse is the improper authority of power, which promotes violence and maltreatment to an innocent bystander. Abuse can be physical, mental, emotional, sexual. It can involve exploitation or neglect. We are starting to see more and more sex crimes being done to the youth, and people are abroad through sex trafficking. So that is a form of exploitation to the vulnerable class of people. Neglect. Neglect is a really important concept to come to understand, because neglect is such a large variance of items that could actually be. You could look at child abandonment, lack of proper care, an unsafe environment, refusal to provide proper necessities such as education or medicine, seeking out medical care. Some people actually have been charged for refusing to provide proper medical care for their children. The other concept of neglect could fall under a child testing positive for drugs at birth. Another time that we've seen testing of children being positive for drugs are when parents are neglectful within their own drug abuse, and or we see a lot of children test positive when a family member or somebody that they live with is involved in the actual manufacturing of drugs. A lot of children will test positive within those environments as well. And there is always the threat of death. Here are some of the statistics in regards to abuse. In this particular chart, we'll see the research that was done by Gilbert and Associates back in 2009. He stated that 34% of individuals go through physical abuse. 24% have had encounters of sexual abuse. 12% is physical neglect, and 17% emotional neglect, with the remaining 13% of emotional abuse. Many times, individuals within each of these categories would fall into emotional abuse as well. And that's always something really important to be aware of, that many of the abuse cases will cross the lines into other types of abuse. So that's something to always take into consideration. On child health, they stated that 28.3% were children who have been physically abused. Child abuse of sexual abuse is 20.7%. Emotional abuse is 10.6%. Physical neglect is 9.9%. Emotional neglect is 14.8%. I'd like to go ahead and show you this video that in regards to abuse and why it is important to advocate. Stop it! So the numbers are unmistakable. Every year, 3 million reports of child abuse are made in the US involving more than 6 million children. How many of those children are actually reported, do you think? According to Child Help, the US has one of the worst records among industrialized nations, losing an average between 4 to 7 children every day to child abuse and neglect. A report of child abuse is made every 10 seconds. Yearly referrals to state child protective services involve 6.3 million children, and around 3 million of those children are subject to be investigated reports. Let's learn how to recognize some of the signs and symptoms of abuse. Recognizing abuse. Why is it important to recognize abuse? Identifying abuse is critical. It is implementing a safe and healthy environment for those that have been expected of mistreatment. We can help a child get out of a home where they're receiving less than adequate care. Maybe a child is not being fed properly. Maybe a child is being abused by an older sibling. Or maybe a child is not receiving the proper medical care or education that they're being provided. How can we recognize signs of abuse? Recognize signs of abuse takes awareness of one's surroundings, an unbiased observation, and the willingness to act upon implications of abuse and neglect. Signs of abuse vary in accordance to the type of abuse. So there are many different variances, whether a child is going through physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, or neglect. Physical abuse, some of the signs are frequent injuries or unexplained bruises or welts or cuts. Is always watchful and alert, as if he or she is waiting for something bad to happen all the time. Because they're hyper vigilant to their surroundings. They may be really in tune with different sounds. They may want to not be around particular people. Injuries appear to have a pattern or marks, such as a hand or a belt. Anytime you would see something like that, it would probably be pretty evident to us that physical abuse is happening within their home. Sometimes they shy away from touch or flinch at a sudden movement or seem afraid to even go home. Sometimes they wear inappropriate clothing to cover up their injuries, such as long sleeve shirts on hot days. That could be a clear implication that that child is indeed being abused. Let's take a look at sexual abuse. What are some of the characteristics that you think that would be shown through sexual abuse? Trouble walking or sitting, displays knowledge or interest in sexual acts inappropriate to his or her age, and even seductive behaviors, makes strong efforts to avoid specific people without any obvious reason. A lot of times, bedwetting at inappropriate ages and after being toilet trained is a possible sign for sexual abuse. Many times a child may have urinary tract infections or a vaginal discharge. And this is found much more predominantly in females. They don't want to change their clothes in front of other people. They want to or participate in physical activities, and is another thing for fear. An STD or pregnancy, especially under the age of 14. Emotional abuse. Some of the signs there are excessively withdrawn, fearful, and anxious about doing something. Shows extremes in behavior, extremely compliant or extremely demanding, extremely passive, or extremely aggressive. Doesn't seem to be attached to a parent or a caregiver. And acts either inappropriately adult, taking care of other children, or inappropriately infantile, rocking, thumb sucking, throwing tantrums. Neglect. Clothes are ill-fitting, filthy, and inappropriate for weather. It is typically a clear sign that there's some type of negligence going on within the home. Hygiene is consistently bad. They're unbathed, matted, unwashed hair, noticeable body odor. Untreated illnesses and physical injuries is frequently unsupervised or left alone or allowed to play in unsafe situations and environments, is frequently late or missing from school, living in an unsafe environment also. Statistics. Statistics confirm whether or not we are truly aware of what is going on. Some of the statistics that I've become aware of, we've already noted, but it also states research has gathered statistics of people undergoing abuse. It is noted that 4 to 16% of children encounter physical abuse, and 5% of boys are sexually abused, and 5 to 10% of girls encounter sexual abuse. And that was documented by Gilbert and Associates back in 2009. Some of the risk factors of abuse are domestic violence, alcohol and drug abuse, addiction, untreated mental illness, lack of parenting skills, stress, and lack of support. What communities are more likely to be at risk of abuse? Low-income working mothers. So a lot of times these are single moms. There's an increased risk of abuse. Immigrants, low social economic status, special needs, and elderly. In accordance to Haw, Collins, and Martino in 2015, they stated definitely in low-income working mothers. Immigrants, families associated with socioeconomic status was documented from a link in Bakersman. Citizens with social economic statuses. One of the things I want to highlight are individuals with disabilities or special needs is at a very high risk of abuse. 54% of boys who are deaf have been sexually abused, compared to 10% of boys who are hearing. 50% of girls who are deaf have been sexually abused, compared to 25% of girls who are hearing. That study was completed by Sullivan, Vernon, and Scallon back in 1987. Individuals with disabilities, including physical, developmental, intellectual, emotional, and behavioral, have been found to be at an increased risk for child maltreatment, with rates being as high as 3.44 times than that of a non-disabled child. And Schenkel in 2014 confirmed that particular study, performed it, and confirmed that was his outcome. A new study at Rochester Institute of Technology indicates that the incidence of maltreatment, including neglect and physical and sexual abuse, is more than 25% higher among deaf and hard of hearing children than among hearing youths. And that was completed by a study by Dude back in 2011. Why is reporting abuse important? Reporting abuse immediately will prevent further criminal offenses being committed against a child, the elderly, or the disabled. We can implement a safe and healthy environment for those exposed to mistreatment, and we can increase the quality of life for the victims. We've learned a little bit about abuse and recognizing it at this point. What we're going to do at this point is go ahead and we're going to take about 5 to 10 minutes, and we're actually going to pair up and look at some case studies together. And then we'll come back and discuss those particular case studies for about another 5 or 10 minutes.